when I came up with the idea for this series, I knew immediately I wanted to talk to you because you are maybe one of the youngest people I know who works with a financial advisor. And I know you've been working with them for like 5 years. So super curious about like what you've learned through that relationship. But before we dive in there, I want to back up a little and maybe have you introduce yourself, tell everyone a little about yourself and what your relationship with money is like.
My name is Austin. Currently live in Chicago. Born in Richmond, Virginia. Moved to San Francisco for a very weird tech job like 10 years ago, actually where I met Lynn. But moved to Chicago like 3 years ago, really wanted a house. I'm a user experience researcher. I'm married. I have a lovely partner and a very cute dog and a very cute cat. And I live in my very cute house. My relationship with money is a lot more complicated than that answer. Growing up in Virginia, I both of my parents worked, but I felt like money was always tight and it was like a source of anxiety for my mom. So like I watched her consistently be anxious about money. And like I remember going to restaurants and my parents were like, you can only order things like in this price range. You like can't get a soda. You have to drink water, no desserts, no appetizers. Like I didn't know any different. And I had a great childhood. It was just like we lived in these kind of like set parameters based on what was available to us. And I actually remember at one point, I feel like my parents decided to get out of like credit card debt and they cut up their credit cards and they were trying to pay things back. They weren't putting anything on them. But I remember I used to answer the home phone for my mom and she was like, there are people that are going to start calling and they're going to be really mean. And I just want like you to understand like what's happening. We've decided that like we want to get out of this debt, but people are going to call and they're going to be asking for money and we're paying it. We're probably just not paying as fast as they want. And so I must have been like 9 or 10. And I remember answering the phone and someone was like really aggressive and they were like trying to speak to my parents and like they wanted this thing. And like it was like that. I don't know. I want to say for like a year or so. But money was like, it was tight. And then even beyond that, like my parents, like when I first started getting an allowance, my parents gave me 3 jars. One was savings, and you're supposed to put the most in savings. So it was the biggest jar. Another one was like, I feel like it was like short-term savings or something. So like you have like long-term savings where you should put your most. I think it was short-term. And then it was like spending money, which was the smallest bucket. And I know that it was intentional that it was the smallest bucket. But like, it was like, oh, money is like this rare thing. And I carefully place it in my buckets and like, I try and save it and it's a valuable asset. And I don't know, like it was basically like save that money. And even building on that, I decided to get a credit card when I was in college and to separate my bank account from my mom's bank account. Cause we had been on like a shared bank account for a while and I overdrew a couple times. I'm not gonna lie. I will take responsibility for that. I was in college. I overdrew. I got in trouble. My mom was pissed. That's on me. I take responsibility. But when I decided to get a credit card, I decided to open my own bank account where she had like no visibility. And I remember my mom was like really mad at and she thought that I was like being irresponsible. And like my cousin like co-signed on my credit card. And my mom was super pissed. She was like, you're not ready for a credit card. Like blah, 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 all this stuff. So like I would go on my groceries, put like $42 worth of groceries on my credit card, immediately come home and pay it off. Because like I was like so afraid of carrying a balance or like ending up in the same credit card debt that like I'd experienced for my parents and that my mom had even told me she'd experienced earlier on too. So I was like very afraid of credit cards, pay for everything in cash, save as much money as you can. It was like a very conservative approach with.
Okay. So that was super helpful. It sounds like you came from a background where like money was present and it was a source of anxiety. So fast forward probably a lot of years. What was happening in your life when you decided you wanted to work with a financial advisor?
Oh, good grief. It was like my circumstances had changed. I'd moved to the Bay Area. For the first time in my life, I had like stock options at work. I had 401ks, which was like, I never had that before. Actually, fun fact, I remember asking Matt about like, oh, how much are you doing in your 401k match? And he was like, Austin, you should be doing like this percentage, like basically maxing out. But like money was tight for me at that point. I was like, I can't max out my 401k. Like it was just realizing there were a lot of things that I didn't understand. And like, I didn't know how to make my money like work for me. And I realized like I was never going to be the kind of person that like wakes up and is like making money moves and is like paying. Like I know there are people that do that and I love that for them, but that's just not the life I'm trying to lead. And so I wanted to find someone who could help me figure out like how I should be distributing my money to make it work for me the best way possible.
I'm so curious. So like, because we met each other at that time, like, yeah, you moved from like Virginia to San Francisco, very different. You went from working in a museum to working in tech, very different. Were people having conversations about money, or did you somehow know what questions to ask?
Well, when I asked my colleagues, Matt and other people that were on the team, like, I don't know how to like pick my benefit. Like, I don't know how to do these things.
Mm,
And Matt was talking to me and I was like, am I dumb for not knowing this? Like, and then I realized like, no, I'm not dumb for not knowing this. I was never exposed to any of this. Like my parents never got stocks. They never
mhm.
got ESPs, ESPPs, or like other word I can't think of right now.
RSUs.
Thank you. Or RSUs. Like that
Yeah.
was never an option for them. Like my dad had a retirement account, but I don't think it was like the same level of like matching from an employer like I had. And so it was basically me asking my coworkers, like, so what do you do? Like, how are you like moving your money around? Actually, I remember Lynn, you came to my house and you showed me your bank account and you walked me through how you would like done things. And I was freaking out because like I had student loans that I was trying to pay off and like other stuff. And I was like, you have so much money in savings or in these other places. Like, I don't understand. And you were like, us, everyone's circumstances are different. And like, you have student loans and like, I didn't have student loans. And like, we kind of walked through, like, you had corporate experience earlier than I did. So like, you had a different salary than I did earlier on, which I really, really appreciate because it was, I feel like money is really easy. It's like one of those things to be like keeping up with the Joneses, like, oh,
What do you
everyone
mean?
else is doing this, but it's like everyone's circumstance is so different. Like there's so much nuance to figuring out like what works for you and like how you want your relationship with money to be. And so I appreciated you being like, well, you and I started at like different points. And so like it's going to look different for each of us. But it was kind of like asking people, oh, like how much are you, matching? Like how much are you putting here? I remember I sat down with Evelyn and I asked her, should I pay off my student loans or should I invest money? And like we walked through like the interest that I could make or that like I could knock out by paying off my student loans versus like what I might make in the stock market. And basically we decided like it was better for me to pay down my debts first because the interest rate. Um, and so it really was me. I guess like good job past Austin. You were like really brave and you asked a lot of people stuff that probably made you look really silly, but you were just trying to figure it out.
I mean, like, again, so many different circumstances. You were kind of living a different life than you had before for once you had extra money, right? So it was just like a circumstance you'd never been in before. And yeah, you were like brave and you asked people like, what, what do I do now? What do these words mean? What's the hierarchy of what I should be contributing to? Um, so you were asking people, you were gaining knowledge, but it sounds like maybe you were like, maybe I'm like missing out on something. Or maybe like I'm just not gonna go out and like Google all of this stuff. So like maybe I should find someone.
I think in like asking people, I had like my dad's cousin. He and his wife, who I love, have always been financially secure and very happy. And like, I remember one time just saying in passing, like, oh, I wonder what it'd be like to get a financial advisor. Cause I had heard that they were like a thing.
Really?
And he was like, you should absolutely get a financial advisor and you should interview them and you should like blah, blah, blah. And I was like, this sounds like a lot of work. Um, but then I asked my friend who lived in the Bay Area with me. She's very money savvy, like really on top of things. And I remember being like, hey, do you have a financial advisor? Like what's going on? Like, tell me your situation. And so she she did have a financial advisor. It was a woman. Obviously, like both of us were like, yeah, we like want to support like women in this field, feel seen, all those types of things. And so it was kind of like, I have enough questions and I have enough income for a change where I could actually like afford to consider something like this. And then I had enough people
Mhm.
like between my dad's cousin being like, yeah, you should definitely do that. And my friend being like, oh, I have one. Do you want to meet her? It was like, okay, that doesn't seem too scary. I can do that.
Mm. I just am like, it was like, okay, great. Someone mentioned it, and like someone was like, I have the solution.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you didn't interview.
It's probably one of the greatest mistakes ever. And I look back now and I'm like, God, Austin, that was like so silly. Um, but like I remember he had told me like ask them about how they would describe their approach. Like he gave me some like really great questions to ask that I most definitely did not ask. Um, but I met her and she seemed really nice and we got along and I had just changed jobs. So she was helping me kind of like roll over my 401k and into
Mm.
an
Yeah.
IRA and like consolidate things that I hadn't done before, like just previously. So it seemed like a good first move. There were things that happened almost immediately that made me that should have been red flags. Um, for instance, I went to roll over my 401k from uh, Visa. I just started another job. And so I wanted to basically combine my 401k from Capital One and Visa into one space and have them like all managed by the same person. Um, and I remember she basically like called, I think it was like Fidelity for me. And to get them to move, like you have to call and we walked through this whole process. And at one point, the woman at Fidelity, I think was like, oh, you need your husband's signature on this thing.
Mhm.
And I was like, excuse me, like, this is my money. I saved this money before we were married. This is on my name. Like, I know, like, what the hell? Um, and I was like very caught off guard. And my financial advisor at the time, she was like, well, this is like standard, like blah, 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 blah. And I was like, no, no, I need another woman on this call to be like also outraged.
Outraged.
This is this process. Like, I'm sorry, what? My husband had nothing to do with this money. Like, nothing. This is all mine. Um, and she also said something once, and I was like, well, it's my money because growing up, my mom had managed all of the finances. My dad brought home most of the money, but my mom managed the finances, which I'm sure is why she had anxiety because everything that was wrong was highly visible to her because she was
Mhm.
everything.
Looking at it all the time.
Yeah. My dad was not. Like I remember there were Christmases where my dad would be like, "Oh, can you buy this thing for me and I'll pay you back? I don't want your mom to like see it on our debit card or credit card statement," because they shared everything. Um and so for me and for Matt, my husband, like we didn't want that. We didn't want one person to be like in charge. And so what we decided on was a split. So we have a joint account where we put like half of our salaries in, and that goes to things like the house payment or eating out together or gas or the car, like the things that we share. And then we also have a percentage of our paychecks that goes into our own bank accounts because
Mhm.
sometimes you want to buy a purse. Sometimes you want to like, I don't know,
Yeah.
a lot of things I want to buy that is none of his business. And like also too, it's like I don't want to have to be worried about him seeing in our joint account that I bought him like a birthday present. Like that just seems silly to me. And so I kept talking about our money in this way that my husband and I had agreed on and that we both felt good about. And this financial advisor kept being like, well, you need to stop thinking about it as my money. It's our money. You're a unit now. There's no separation. And like in hindsight, that should have been the
Yeah.
flag where I was like, no, no, you're not the right fit for me. You don't understand
Mhm.
like why we made these decisions. And like, that's the thing about like a financial advisor and the beauty of interviewing is like, I wish I had asked questions about that because if I had heard her say that up front, I'd be like, nah, you are not the girl for me. Like,
Right.
no. So between that and like, oh, you need your husband's sign off and her acting like that was not absolutely absurd. And then like, the whole like our money, not mine. I was like, nah, girl, this is my money. This is my purse. This is my car. This is like my stuff. Like I pay for these things on my own. Um, And I've always been really fiercely independent. So I didn't like the idea of someone being, even to my partner, like I'm not trying to be
Mhm.
like lumped completely together.
Yeah. So it sounds like you don't work with that financial advisor anymore based on
Never.
the tenses you're using.
Uh-huh. And actually, that was like a very happy accident. So that financial advisor actually moved to like a completely different place, and she didn't tell us. She didn't even tell the friend, I think that was like we found out on her like LinkedIn or something. And so yes, I know, right? So the company called us and was like, "Hey, she's left. So we're gonna place you with this person. He'll be great, blah blah blah." And of course, like I am very salty because I'm like, "No, I wanted a woman. Like this is the person my friend uses. Like I want this. Like it wasn't even that great." And so like I fully went into meeting this next financial advisor very skeptical, which actually was probably great because I think
Mhm.
I asked tougher questions because at this point I was already like jaded and grumpy
You're
that like,
like,
yeah,
prove it to me.
yeah.
Yeah.
I already had to start over. Like, I have nothing to prove to you, sir. Um, and he's amazing. Like, it was a total fluke. In the very first phone call, we got off the phone with him and I was like, I think I really like him. And it was just like, he understood us and he understood like that we wanted our own money and that we wanted our joint money. My husband's really interested in crypto and he had no interest in like telling him to like move his money to stocks or something else that he can manage. He was like, okay, like, is that the thing that you like doing? Like, great. You keep doing that. I'll manage like these things over here. And like my husband is um I'm way more risk adverse than he is. And so he does a really nice job of like meeting us individually and then together. It's almost like I have a financial advisor for three people, like for me, for my husband, and then for us as like a combined unit. I
Yeah.
really appreciate that he's not trying to get me to like change certain things about like, oh no, it's our money. Like, no, it's not. And he never was like, he was like, that makes sense. Like, tell me about like how you think about money. And he just really good questions. And then talked a little bit about his approach and how he wanted to make sure what he was doing aligned with us. And it didn't feel like I was being mansplained to. It was very like he was listening to hear what we were saying. He respects Matt's approach. He respects my approach. And then he does a really great job of taking this holistic look at our finances and being like, I think you could do X, Y, and Z. And I really, really appreciate that about him.
Yeah. It seems like he's not maybe unlike the first person you worked with, not coming in with a here's how I think money should be done and then like putting you into that template or format and more like, okay, here's how you think about money or where you're at and let me figure out how to, like you said, work in an individualized way.
Yeah. Like he's definitely more conservative with me because he knows I have anxiety around money. Like
Mhm.
obviously, like I grew up the way that I did. Like I'm always nervous about like not having enough. I'm getting better. Thank you, therapy. But like mainly speaking, like he does a really nice job. He even knows sometimes like when we get on the phone, like I'm feeling really anxious and it's like the nicest thing that anyone's ever done. He'll be like, Austin, you're fine. I think we can do this. Or like, and it feels like when you get off the phone with him, you're not freaking out. You're like, oh yeah, there is like a path forward. There is a solution, a handful of solutions that he's given me that he thinks will like meet both of our approaches.
And what does that engagement look like now? Do you all have like, I don't know, quarterly check-ins? Do you call them up whenever you are feeling anxious? Like, how does that work?
So there are regular check-ins that he does, and like his assistant will put stuff on the calendar and be like, "Hey, it's time for your check-in. We're going to go through your like net worth. We're going to talk about blah blah blah." And so they have those. And then actually, it's funny you mentioned this. I actually am going to reach out to him because there's some stock that I think I want to sell to pay off like our HELOC some because I think we're paying more in interest than I would like to pay. And so
And
it's kind of ad hoc too. So there's like a cadence that he
yeah.
initiates and then ad hoc, like where I'm like, hey, the stock market's doing really well, or like, I really want to pay this thing off. I don't know what stock to sell. I don't know where to pull this from. Like, can you help? And so he'll go through like all the cost basis and like look at everything and be like, hey, I think you should do this, this, and this. And won't even lie. So we paid someone to do our taxes, like one of those. general companies. I won't put them on
Mhm.
blast, or I wish I could. Um, we paid them to do our taxes. It's like the second or third year. When we moved from California to Illinois, it was so complicated to do like both states' taxes and federal
Yeah.
taxes. And
The
like I was like,
partial,
nope,
yeah,
I'm paying someone for
and
this.
the
This is
stock.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is for someone that's not me.
Mhm.
And then this past year, we got our tax return back, and like typically the most we paid in taxes is like, you know, I think on the high end, maybe like $6,000.
Right, at the
Um,
end of the year, you
y-
have to, like, make up the difference.
yeah, yeah. She called us and was like, so you owe $27,000. And I looked at Matt and I was like, absolutely, we do owe that. Like, I don't understand. And I'm freaking out because we're really close to the tax deadline. Matt had started his own company and he was trying to get like the right paperwork to file taxes. So we were way closer to the timeline. Usually we've done all of this in like February because I'm trying to mess around. I called our financial advisor. I emailed him and he's like, can I call you? And I was like, I am freaking out. What do I do? And he was like, can you send me? Because like I identified that it was something from RSUs that I was getting from my company at the time. And I was like, this is what it is. I don't understand. And I sent it to him and he called me back in like 15 minutes and he was like, it's the cost basis. She's saying that it came in at zero, but like it should have come in at like a value at the time. And once she corrected that, our taxes went down to $7,000. It's like, that's not even in his job description. And he did it because he gives a crap. And like I don't know, I just really appreciate him like taking the time to do that and meeting us where we are and kind of helping us feel like we're setting ourselves up for success.
And we didn't mention this, but I know this because I know you. You're n like, they're not based in Chicago. Like, this is a financial advisor somewhere else in the world. Well, not
In
the world,
Minnesota.
US. Yeah. It's interesting because I think, like, in financial advising, I mean, it's a very traditional business, right? So there's a lot of people who are really engaged in their local community and things like that. But in your case, you were able to find someone remotely. And I guess you found them because your friend had found them. So I was gonna
Mhm.
ask you, like, how did you find someone remotely? But
Well, and that was the thing is like the friend that had initially like recommended and everything, and I don't even think she used that person anymore. But the friend had like she said, I didn't want someone in the Bay Area who was going to like
Mhm.
treat my money the same way like Bay Area tech bros do. And I was like, oh yes, that like I'm from Virginia. Like I'm not a tech, like yes, I work in tech and like yes, I've been there, but like I don't think about the world in that bubble. And I
Mhm.
don't want someone to think about my money in that bubble either. And like, I don't want them to be investing all of my money in like tech stuff. Like I want to diversify in a different way.
Uh-huh.
And so I actually love the fact that he's in Minnesota. And actually I just referred another friend from California who's like 8 years older than me, married with two kids. He now uses my financial advisor and loves him. Like,
Right.
like he's the best. And I'm like, yeah, he really is. He has this really beautiful approach of like, he'll lean into being riskier if you want, or like more risk adverse if you want. And like, he really does meet you where you are.
Awesome. I have this question written down, so I'm gonna ask you, but I think I know what the answer is. Right? You've been working with your financial advisor for a while. You've moved, switched jobs multiple times, you bought a house, renovated a house. There were periods in your life where maybe money was a little tight. Through all of that, did you ever consider stop working with your financial advisor?
Oh my God, no, never, never. Like, actually, like, I'm feeling like money's a little tight right now. It's the end of the year. There's a lot going on. And I think after this call, I'm going to email him and be like, hi, I would like to know like what I can do to make my money feel less tight. Like, how can I make things go further? What can I sell? What can I do? Um, just because he understands, like, he sees stuff I don't see. And I actually think I'd be more anxious if I like didn't work with him. Even if it meant like I saved like X amount of dollars, it's like I think my money works harder for me when it's with him because this is like it's like anybody. It's like he's a specialist. Like I'm not gonna go out and try and be a plumber. Like now that I've worked with him, like I'm not gonna go pretend that I'm some financial advisor. I'm not. And like just because I understand what these things are doesn't mean I like know how to play the game. And I would much rather him help me how to play the game so that I don't have to try and like navigate that by myself.
Yeah. I was wondering if you would mind sharing, how do you pay your advisor?
One of the first things he told us when we met him is, I don't think it's fair for me to make money if you're not making money.
Yeah.
So he only takes like a percentage of profits. We don't pay him an annual fee or anything like that. It's only if our
Mm.
money is making money.
And so it's not it's pretty common in the industry to have assets under management. So it's like if you have this much money with him, he gets, let's say, like 1%. So it's not that. It's something different where it's like, depending on how the stock market
Growth.
is doing. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And it's small. It's not something crazy. Cause like, if it was, I'd be like, what is this line item? Um, it's not. And I can't think of what it is off the top of my head. I literally thought about it earlier, but like in my mind, it's negligible for like what he does for us. I
So you
mean, a
saved you
lot of
$20,000 in taxes.
like literally, I was gonna say alone. This has like saved my bacon just once, and I'm like, no, whatever you want, like please. And he's just very approachable, very down to earth, never like, yeah, just very aligned.
How long have you been working with this advisor?
6 years,
Oh, wow. Okay. So quite a while.
5 or 6 years, something like.
So how has working with them changed or not the way you look at your money?
Is it weird to call him like a money therapist? Because I feel like
Well,
he's definitely my money therapist, and like that's not against my normal therapist. She's great, and she's helping me work through this too. But it's definitely coming both directions. Um, I think like I'm a worst case scenario person. Like I'm consistently like, when my husband was laid off at one point, the first thing I thought of was like, we're gonna sell the house. We're gonna have to do like, there was no
mhm,
in between for me. It was like
right. But it's like,
immediately,
oh,
yeah. Like there was no like, oh, like this, and this. It's like, no. Everything is gonna like the world is gonna. Um, and so I think uh like for me, when I talk to him, he's like, Austin, we can do this, this, or this. And he says this thing, which I'm like, he may be saying just because he's really nice, but I'm going to say it because he means it. He's like, I always forget that you two are in your mid-30s because you're doing so well. Um, and whether or not he means it, I respond really well to those words of affirmation. It just would sound awesome. But like, he's made it so when I'm nervous about something, instead of spiraling, I'll just send him an email and be like, hey, I'm getting nervous about X, Y, and Z because of this. Like, what are my options? And it's always a very like thoughtful response. And I think it's actually, I'm not going to say I don't still go to the apocalyptic option because I definitely still, but I think it takes me a little longer to get to that point. And
mhm.
even if I get there, I'm like, well, I haven't talked to Dan yet. And like,
And
I know if I talk to Dan, we'll figure something. And like,
yeah.
I feel like I can be honest with him about like what I'm afraid of and what I'm excited about. Like, I've told him like my career aspirations. Like, I've told him that like I eventually want to get out of tech and I want to own boring businesses. Like, he is fully aware of like my life, my like the path that I would like to lead. Um, but yeah, I think it's brought me like a peace of mind that like my money actually can work for me instead of being like a source of anxiety.
Mhm.
And again, like I'm still anxious, like don't get it twisted. But I think there's this really nice pause where I can be like, oh, well, I haven't talked to Dan yet. We'll figure it out. And there are so many things like ways to invest or like move your money that I just never knew about. I feel
Yeah.
like looking out for me. And I'm sure that's not true for everyone, but I really do feel like he's trying to like consider what's in our best interest as he makes decisions. And so it brings me this peace of mind. And I do think there's a part of me that's like, before I go full panic mode, I'm just,
Mhm.
well, I haven't talked to Dan yet. And if Dan panics, which he hasn't yet, so it seems like things are fine. If Dan panics, like, then maybe I should panic. Um, but thus far, no. And he's just very like problem solving. Like when I bring something, he's like, well, we can do it this way. We can do it this way. Like, what about this? What do you have here? And it feels like this really nice collaboration and my money feels less scary.
It's interesting. I hear a couple of things from you. I hear like definitely there's expertise there, which is like why you started working with a financial advisor in the first place, right? But there is also a bit of like, um, there's someone in your corner or someone who's thinking about you.
Yeah.
And there's like someone who can think about optionality because like you might look and just see a dead end, but like they see multiple paths and kind of in like a, I wouldn't say coaching way, but they're like, okay, like what path do you want to choose? Like it's
Yeah.
helpful for them to point out like, oh, there's this little trail here. There's this other option here, but they're not like, oh, you have to go down this because this is
Yeah. I feel very heard and like validated and like what I say matters. And truthfully, like I remember telling him about the meeting my husband's signature thing. And he was like, yeah, that's really silly. Or like I've been on a call before where I've done something and they've asked for something. And I'm like, Dan, is this for real? And he was like, I know, Austin, it's silly. Instead of like making me feel weird about it, he's like, no, this is like broken or weird and like annoying. I'm sorry that you have to go through this. It's nice to have someone in your corner who knows what they're doing, like who's looking out for you. And that's their thing. Like it's not a pastime for him. Like this is his career. He's super approachable, very funny. I get a Christmas card with his family picture every year that I put on my mantle. Like, uh, yeah, it's not scary. I'm never like worried about talking to. It's like I'm actually excited because I feel like I'm going to leave that conversation uh, more informed than I was before and with a path forward.
yeah,
And
clarity. Yeah. So if you could go back and tell baby Austin, like you was, I don't know, 7 years ago, something about working with a financial advisor, like what advice would you have for yourself?
you should do what my dad's cousin told me, and you should interview a few of them. I would still ask your friends, like friends who have similar values and things to you. I would ask them, like, are they working with someone that they like? If they're working with someone they don't like, it's like, okay, maybe I like steer clear of that place. Um, but I would still ask around, like, who's using things or people that you like working with. And then I would interview a handful of them instead of just one. And probably I would go in with like a set list of 5 questions and I would talk about how you manage your money and pay really close attention to how you feel on that call, which I know it's like, yeah, it doesn't matter how you feel. We're talking about like optimizing money. No, I actually totally disagree. Like I should have listened to those like red flags with the first person. And if you don't feel comfortable in a room or asking those questions, that should not be your financial advisor. Like, it should be someone that because you're about to lay out all your finances for them. Like, he knows what I have in crypto, what my husband has in crypto, what I have in stock, what my husband has in stock, what we have in
What
our
you spend on.
everything. Look,
Yeah.
everything. If you are remotely uncomfortable with this person, do not go with them because they are about to be all up in your financial business. So, like, I would say, like, definitely interview them, ask them questions about, like, how they would describe their approach. Um, like, for me, I wish I'd ask questions about, like, how do you approach managing the finances of, like, a married couple? Just because, like, Matt and I are aligned, but I wasn't aligned. Like, we weren't aligned with our first advisor. Uh, and so, like, if there's something that's, like, really important to you, if you're, like, really interested in crypto or you're really interested in a specific thing, like, if I had been super interested in crypto, like, I would say go back and, "Oh, what do you think about this? Like, where do you see this going?" And find someone whose views kind of align with yours. And that doesn't mean that they won't come up with new and interesting solutions, but I think having, like, that type of alignment sets you up for success in terms of, like, I'm comfortable talking to them. They're not gonna try and, like, change things that, like, I have intentionally decided on. That's what I would tell baby Austin.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Austin. I really appreciate you coming on and talking with me. I'm sure this will resonate with a lot of people who might be thinking about getting a financial advisor, but also with financial advisors who are maybe starting out being like, how do I work with someone like kind of in your circumstances? So
Please
really
listen to
appreciate
your
it.
people. If anyone is listening, just listen to folks. They're just we don't know what to do, and we're coming to you for expertise, and like we just want to make sure we're making the best decisions that we can. So please like listen and help us feel heard.
Awesome. I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you, Austin.
Thanks, Lynn.
That was a really interesting conversation with Austin. And I've filmed several conversations like this one with people working with financial advisors from different backgrounds. If you find these insights valuable, let me know in the comments below, and I'll share more of these real client perspectives. See you next time.